Hi CC, I hope you're doing well. I'm going to be doing the talk for today and it's on the subject of Jonah. Now I've decided to do it early in the day because I've come to the unfortunate point where I've got to cut my own hair. I don't want to do it, but lockdown has brought me to this moment. So rather than do it later when it'd be far more embarrassing, I'll do it now. I did try and cut my own hair a couple of years ago. It didn't go well and I ended up having to go to work looking a bit like Sigourney Weaver out of Aliens. So to avoid that, I'm going to do the video now. So Jonah, what does it mean for us today? Now Jonah was called to the people of Nineveh to ask them to repent. He didn't want to do that. He went the other way and things didn't go well for him. So I still believe God calls people to go to people groups and call them to turn back to God. I think he still does that. But not many of us are called to that. So what does Jonah mean for regular people like you and me? Well, I wanted to share some testimony about how the story became real for me. It's quite long, so I'm going to try and keep it short because I don't want you to be bored. So maybe about 9 years ago or so now, I took the opportunity to become the part-time paid youth worker of my previous church. Now, I've been praying for years for an opportunity to serve God. It came up and I was approached and I thought, this must be God because, I've been praying for so long. And youth work wasn't my thing, but, I used to preach and I was on the eldership, but I thought, this must be God. I've been praying for years. So I took the opportunity. The eldership put me on a theology course. And to cut a long story short, the theology course I was really doing well at, loved it, really blessed. The youth work was a different story. I was not gelling with that at all. I did not have the giftings. It did not go well. And after about 6 months, I had to say to the minister, I don't think this is working out for me. I just don't feel like I'm fitting this. So conversations went back and forward over the next few months, but it ended up that after about a year, I had to step down. But the eldership were good. They said, you know what, we still feel you're supposed to do that course. So we're going to fund you to do it. But by then I was burned out. 2 young children at the time, and I'd been flat out, doing work, church work, and been on the eldership, youth work, all this stuff, and I had enough. And I thought, you know what, now I'm going to put the whole lot down. Went full time back into IT, which was fine, but I put everything down. And I said, you know what, I think it was after a few weeks of doing the course, I thought, I'm not going to do it. And that actually cost the church money because they'd already paid the first instalment. But I said, you know what, I don't think I can't do it. And, I thought, there's other stuff I want to do for God. I'm going to do that. So in short, I thought I didn't walk away from God at all. I still had my faith, but I thought I'm going to do this for God instead. And I'm just going to do my full-time IT. They went fine for a few months. But then after a while, I started to feel there was difficulties in my life. Things were not going well for me. I won't go into loads of detail, but there were struggles we were having with one of the children that was really difficult, really brought a lot of stress. And eventually after 6 months, the contract I got that was well paid come to an end, and I got a far lower paid contract in another IT job. And that place where I worked was not a nice place at all. There was a lot of backbiting. The people weren't nice. It was a horrible atmosphere. I started to feel unwell around the same time. I'd never been unwell in that way before, and I was ill, and so I was having trouble with my children. I was feeling ill, and it was a horrible place to work, and it just really came to a head. I just couldn't work out what was going on. I was in a bit of a storm, really. I just couldn't work out why things were so not right in my life. And there come to a point where one morning I was watching a video of one of the children, and it was about Jonah. And it sort of struck me because God didn't really talk to me through that whole year. It was just like God was far away. And I just felt like God said to me in that moment, not with an audible voice or anything, but it just resonated with me inside, you're in the belly of the whale. And I didn't know what to do about that. I thought, yeah, I feel like that. Everything's going wrong. It certainly feels like the belly of the whale. Nothing's going right. I'm not getting paid right. I'm going into my overdraft. There's problems with my children. It's all difficult and it's all painful. And if I'm completely honest with you, I was so stressed that I wasn't acting well at work. I didn't tell them I was a Christian. I was quite foul-mouthed because it would have been bad witness to say I was a Christian in that moment. And I was not a good witness at all. I was just being very worldly. I hadn't lost my faith at all, but I was really stressed. I was struggling. The thing I decided to do for God didn't work out, fell apart. So things weren't going well. And God wasn't really speaking that much. And this went on for months, and it was nearly actually a year, getting close to, probably about 10 months or so, that I started to think, where did I go wrong? And I thought about it, and suddenly I come to the realization, maybe I should have finished that course. Maybe that's what I was supposed to do, and I went wrong. Now, God didn't tell me that. Nobody called up and said, Alex, I feel you're supposed to go on that course. nothing was happening. I was hearing nothing. It was depressing. It was empty. It was sad. But I thought, you know what, I need to do that course. Now, I didn't have the money to do it because previously the church had agreed to pay for me. Now, that wasn't there anymore. I didn't even ask. I didn't want to ask. I thought I'll fund this myself, but that must be where I went wrong. That must be why there's such a mess. So I decided to go back on that course. I had probably enough money for the first instalment, but that was about it. Now, within a week of me saying I'm going to go back on that course, deciding in my mind I'd do it and start making inquiries, I got a call back from my older job, the well-paid job, and they said, do you want to come back? And I was like, yes, I want to come back. I went back, got the higher paid job, and they were willing to let me go on this course, which meant leaving slightly earlier, one of the days. So things were starting to fall back into place for me. Now, but even then, I was in such a cloud, as it were, that it got to the sort of September time or close to when the course was supposed to start. And I thought, you know what, maybe I should just keep this full-time job, not do the course, and that little bit of extra money I could spend on myself. There was something I really wanted to buy. It wasn't a really bad thing, but it was something I wanted. And I thought, you know what, I really want that, but I could buy it and have this better paid job. And that seems really worldly, but I'm just being honest with you. That's how I felt at the time. But I decided, no, I think God has given me this opportunity. I need to finish this course. I need to do it. He's given me this job back. And so within a few weeks, I was feeling blessed again. I was feeling like the clouds had lifted. I was feeling like things were starting to fall back into place again. And it was just because I decided to go back and do what the elders had said I should do about, nearly a year later. So I did this course, and funny enough, within that year, a new hub had opened up for the course nearer to where I worked. So it was a far less journey for me. And I went on the course. It was good. And it was difficult because I had to do it with a full-time job and I had essays to do and I didn't have all the time I did when I did the youth work, but I managed to finish it. I got to the end and I've now got my certificate for the 2-year theology course. But what was interesting is also at the end of that year I had just enough money to left over, and I don't know how I had all this money come in. I have no idea, but God somehow provided, because it was probably a couple of grand's worth. And at the end I had a little bit of money left. And Tina said to me, you know what, you've barely taken any leave. Why don't you use that extra money for yourself? And I felt like that was almost like God sort of saying to me, well done, son. Here's a reward. You did what I asked. And I was able to buy that thing that I wanted, that I nearly quit the course to get. I was able to buy it. And so I just want to share that testimony because I felt like when I walked away from what God wanted to do, even though I thought, I'll do this for God, I'll do something else. I put some spiritual language around it, but actually I was being disobedient. Everything went wrong. Lots of things went wrong. I was still in God's mercy, but it was a storm and I was in the belly of the whale. Money was not good. Family was not good. Work was not good. And then when I turned around and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do what I feel God wanted me to do. Work went better. Family went better. Lots of things got sorted. I felt blessed. It was almost like these dark clouds lifted and the sun shone and suddenly I was back in the will of God. Does that mean everything was easy? No, but I was in God's grace rather than his mercy, which I felt like I was in when I was in that year when everything went wrong. So what does that teach us? Well, I think it teaches us that, look, God is loving, but also he's loving through discipline sometimes. And God had to discipline me that year. And it might have seemed harsh. You think, why did God have to do that to you? Well, honestly, I wouldn't have listened. If he hadn't intervened, if he hadn't have put me through these difficulties, I wouldn't have turned around and finished what I was supposed to do. And that course is coming useful to me. That course was a blessing to me. But I wasn't going to finish it. I wasn't going to do it. I decided against it. But God had to teach me otherwise. And so I look back now, and even though that was a hard time, I realised he was just being a loving dad and teaching me something. He never brought me to the end. He never brought me to more than I could cope with. But it was very difficult. There were times when I just felt so down. But he got me through. So I think what we learn from that is that, once again, God is a loving, but also sometimes disciplining Father who wants what's best for us. So if you feel God has called you something, if God has called you to step into something, or just he's asked you to change something, to do something that he wants you to do, don't walk away. Don't walk in the other direction, even if it seems difficult, because you'll find it far easier in his blessing, going with him and his spirit, than pushing against him and going against what he wants you to do, because he'll probably have to turn you around anyway, and it will cost you a year of your time, where it cost me a year anyway. So I hope that testimony speaks to somebody, because the story of Jonah really means a lot more to me now. It became so real to me in that time. And I would encourage you to read it because it's only 4 chapters. I read it this morning. Very easy read. Take a look at Jonah. Great story. And maybe it speaks to somebody out there. Maybe you've been through the same thing, or maybe you're going through it now. So God bless you, and I hope that you continue to do well in this difficult time. God bless you, SEC.